Next up, a quick video on commit messages and which tense, present or past tense, you should use while writing them, and does it even matter? This is kind of a weird thing in Git. It always baffled me when I was starting out, but the Git documentation officially recommends that you use present tense imperative style commit messages. So present tense, meaning verbs like make something or change X, fix X, instead of past tense, fixed, changed, updated. So imperative style, though, or the imperative mood, is best illustrated probably by the quote from the documentation. Describe your changes in imperative mood. Make Zizzy do frots instead of makes Zizzy do frots, or I changed Zizzy to do frots. Write things as if you're giving orders to the codebase to change its behavior. Personally, I always found this weird. I still do. Even if I follow this a lot of the time, it just doesn't seem natural to me. You don't have to do this, of course. This is all just convention, just a practice you can get in the habit of. There's a lot of debate over this, but again, this is sort of the official recommendation from the Git docs. Here's a blog post written by Umir Gaspar, where he talks about the two, well, I guess there's more than two options, but the two common options using the present tense or the past tense. And the present tense, as we've already talked about, is what Git recommends. And one of the main reasons people use it is that Git actually generates its own messages at some point. When we talk about merging, it will generate a commit message that looks like this: merge pull request, blah, blah, blah. So it says merge in present tense. But honestly, in my opinion, I kind of feel like past tense makes more sense to me, because you're making a commit with the work that you have done. It's finished, you're committing it. But honestly, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter as long as you are consistent, or more importantly, as long as you're following the pattern set out by whatever organization you're working with. If it's a company or an open source project, if everyone else is doing present tense and they ask you to do present tense, you should do present tense. So I try and stick with present tense when I'm teaching. If we type git log, the commit messages I have been writing are, split X, or rename, or create, or begin. So those are present tense imperative, but the community is somewhat split on this. If you look at this popular Stack Overflow post from 10 years ago, the top answer says you definitely should use present tense, but then the second answer says you should almost always use the past tense. So that's number one and number two directly in conflict. Anyway, this video is going on longer than it needs to. I just wanted to make that point that in the real world, you'll likely come across present tense imperative commit messages. And as I mentioned, you don't have to follow this pattern, especially in your own personal use. But if you're working at a company or on an open source project, definitely pay attention to the guidelines for writing commit messages.